Folks, welcome to WKNI TV 25, and once again, we're privileged to have Representative Mike Jones on our set, and you're not in session, not in anything, but anyway, welcome to WKNI once again, Mike. And,
good to see you.
Been out with the kids, been out doing business, and been out running around playing, I shouldn't say playing, being representative. You wish it was playing sometimes.
There hasn't been a whole lot of playing going on lately. We've been pretty busy. I've been speaking with a lot of different groups. I've been traveling on the media circuit, trying to talk with different people and get information out. And that's part of my job, is to give details, give facts, give information so people are more informed.
Well, Mike, with all that going on, I mean, we've also got the expansion of your district coming up too, and you're getting out there meeting folks, I'm sure.
That's correct. I've been visiting into Coffee County. There's a section of Coffee County that's being added to District 92, and it doesn't actually come into play until 2014, but you know me well enough by now, I don't typically wait on stuff like that. I've been visiting in Coffee County, starting to get to know people in that area of what will be our district. I've still got a lot of areas to visit that I haven't traveled to yet, and I've been traveling through our district that's already here now. I've been down to Escambia County on some functions and doing some things down there. I've been all over Covington County. I speak at civic groups whenever I'm invited, and it's part of the job. It's the part of the job I enjoy the most. I enjoy meeting people, hearing from people, trying to answer questions. That's what I enjoy doing that.
Well, in between being the state representative and traveling around, being a full-time lawyer, not to mention judge for the city of Andalusia, and then we have that wonderful family of yours you get to be dad and husband to. You must have a wonderful little pocket calendar.
It gets to be tough sometimes, but I probably only average about 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, but I'm used to it, and I enjoy work. I'm sort of a workaholic, and I enjoy what I do. It's God's blessed me in so many ways, and I don't take it for granted. I try to work through things as much as I can.
Well, this is the day before the ballet 5K run, and we're recording this now, and you were talking about you're going to be part of that. I'd love to just put one of them mobile cameras on you. I might go find somebody that's got one that we can clip on your shirt or on your hat, and just see how much you do run. But
well, and I haven't run in a long time. I've started running again in the last probably 3 or 4 months. I lost a good bit of weight since February of this year, and I feel better, and I needed to lose some weight, and since then I've started running again and started to enjoy it again. And my wife and I are going to run the 5K tomorrow morning, and we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm going to put the camera on her so she's looking at you when you're running.
Well, we're looking forward to it. It's supposed to be a beautiful day tomorrow as well, yeah. And so I think it's going to be perfect, and we hope there's a good turnout, but whether there is or not, we're looking forward to it.
How them young ladies doing? Every time I see them, boy, they're growing like beanstalks out there.
Well, school's in session, so between dance and school and band and soccer and everything that goes along in their lives, it stays pretty active, but I found a little time to help coach a little bit. I'm not the head coach. I'm just one of the sideline coaches, but
I think you're ahead of enough.
But I try to do some things, and that's important. And you know that's important to me. I try to stay as active with my children as possible and interact with them, and they interact with me on what we do in our lives, and it's just a choice we've made. But we do as much as we can. So it's just the life we lead.
Well, congratulations. You've got more pots on the fire than what do they call that chef, the minute chef on TV or something like that?
I wouldn't have it any other way.
I guess not. I guess you're on that adrenaline run all the time. But I get tired just talking to you. and I'm not meaning that in a bad way. I get wore out just thinking about all the energy you spend in a day. I mean, it's just insane.
Well, I'm one of those people that I believe the more active you stay, and the more active that you are in a normal day, it kind of keeps you young. I mean, it keeps you kind of moving through life, and if you keep your brain active and you keep your body active, then you'll have a healthier, longer life, I believe. So,
well, hope so. If you're out there jogging, get run over by a truck, that ain't going to extend your life any. But.
No, but I run pretty early. I run when most people are still asleep. So,
and anyway. Mike, welcome again. And on a serious note now, we're going to go ahead and go forward with
Sure.
what we came up. The 18th is right around the corner. It's
Correct.
this Tuesday coming up. And in fact, we'll probably air this on Monday and Tuesday and get the folks out there so they can go vote informed. Now, folks, I'm telling you, well, I'm going to be serious with this for a second, and then I'm going to pick on him a little bit. But anyway, the 18th, okay, this Tuesday, I know a lot of people are going, what? That's not the runoff days for all these other races. That's not any other thing. What's that all about? It's on SB 147 that Mr. Arthur Orr, Representative Arthur Orr, put
Senator Arthur Orr.
Senator Arthur Orr. Hey, there you go. Put it all together and presented it, and Mike's going to explain a little bit about it here. And there's been some social media conflict with it about Section 4 of it, which we'll touch on, and also about the timing of placing it on the ballot, being that there's nothing else there, and this is a secret, what do you call it, whatever they call it, just get it out there and have it, not enough people turn out to make a difference in it, and it passed, and everybody's happy. And y'all were supposed to be, the conservative group going in there and not, I mean, there's been some wild accusations made on social pages, and some of the media has taken off on it as well,
Right.
as far as the viability of this bill and what the real purpose of it is. And want to make sure everybody knows it's not a tax.
Correct.
Okay, it is not a tax. It's just taking the monies that are already going to be there and putting them in a different location.
Correct.
And there's Section 4, which we're going to love to get into, but it's been really pulled out of proportion.
I would agree.
Okay. So, and I and as I see it, that's, and then read it, and the real bill, I sat there and I said, yeah, really? But, hey, you know how politicians are and media can get, and people out there that just want to, sink the battleships. So, Mike, with all that being said, SB 147 on this Tuesday, polls open at 7, close at 7. I want to remind everybody that you go to your same polling places. Okay, you just don't go to the city of Andalusia and go. You go to the same polling places. All polling locations will be open on Tuesday. A lot of people are asking about that. They're saying, oh, geez, where do we go vote? Mm-hmm. Go to where you voted for this man. And
that's correct.
But anyhow, want to get that all out of there. Mike, it looks like somebody put together a bill that was trying to be pro-conservative, is what I'd call it. In other words, they're looking toward the future, trying to hem things in.
That's correct.
When we get into this, I want to remind you, too, that we are also looking at Searcy closing. Mm-hmm. We're looking at several major cutbacks that are coming into the state. Mm-hmm. We're looking at some consolidation of services that we talked about before.
Correct.
So there's a major issue here in the state of Alabama. We're broke.
Well,
or close to it.
I would say this. The issue is cash flow.
Right.
And that's something that we'll talk about as we get into this. But just to start out, this piece of legislation originally had zero to do with the issue that's being discussed about now. This bill, SB 147, was filed the very first day of session, this past legislative session, and it was filed by Senator Orr, but it was actually drafted by our state treasurer, Young Boozer. And
every time I hear his name, I go, "Yeah, it took a young boozer to do that." But
well, and it's for a very, very good reason. Right now, under existing law, the way that the interest is calculated from the Alabama Trust Fund, that for the money that then is transferred to the general fund on a yearly basis. Right now, it's got such large variables that, for instance, one year we may budget, let's say, $200 million. It is transferred as it is now, but because of changes that occurred during the year and the royalties that come in, and the market conditions, it may drop $50 or $100 million from what was budgeted to what actually comes in, and it created some very tough situations in our state where we might have a $50 or $100 million hole that wasn't expected because of changes in market conditions. And so our treasurer looked at that and said that that clearly is something we need to change, because that's not a very efficient way to budget. It's causing some very dramatic problems, and frankly, it contributes to the problem of proration. And so to try to correct that, he put together and his people put together this piece of legislation. And it requires public approval, because it's anything that impacts and draws upon and affects the money in the Alabama Trust Fund has to be voted on by the people. That's because it takes a constitutional change. And so this was drafted for that reason. And so sections 1, 2, and 3 of this 8-page bill have nothing to do with anything else but that issue. At the very last day of session, and this bill was kind of held to the side until the last day of session, because it's one of those things that I think everybody knew would pass with overwhelming support. But it was held, and towards the end of the session, probably the last couple of days of session, we saw that there were problems, and we were trying different ways to address them. And I'm not on the budget committee, so I can't speak for those budget committees. I'm on totally different committees. But I can tell you that while we were working those issues that last night, an amendment was added the very last night of session, and the amendment that was added was Section 4 that you alluded to earlier. And Section 4 is only, I think it's 4 lines long, and I'm just going to read it. Section 4 reads, beginning with the state's 2012-2013 fiscal year and continuing through the state's 2014-2015 fiscal year, there's hereby transferred $145,796,943 annually to the state general fund from the Alabama Trust Fund. That's it. That's the entirety of that clause.
Now, the reason for that is before there was large fluctuations of what would be put.
Well, this was added, and this is not anything to do with that other sections 1, 2, and 3. It's totally different. This was.
But people are trying to confuse that with that.
Some, and there's been a lot of confusion about it. This was added because we'd already, in the last, and I'm going to back up one step further. When we came into office in 2010, and our first session was started in 2011, there was no preparation. We were just handed basically, a deck of cards and say, here, play with this. We didn't have anything to do with anything that we were handed. And so that first legislative session in 2011, really budgeting was about surviving. We had to do things to survive that session. The first year that we really had time to prepare and work a budget was this past session, 2012. And during the course of all that session, we cut $674.4 million is the total amount we've cut through budgeting changes, through changes in consolidation, through pension modifications, and that's how much we cut in our budgets to this date. That's a lot, and it has impacted our state because we are working to live within our means. But with those deep cuts, they were things that you could see that were more obvious lines, things you could cut relatively easily because they present themselves pretty easily. But as you get towards the end of the cuts, you have to be more concerned about what is the term that you hear every now and then? Unintended consequences. And if you cut some things in good faith that you think, for instance, Medicaid fraud, there's no question we need to do more with Medicaid fraud. But if you cut too quick without evaluating these issues very specifically, you end up cutting people out of Medicaid that need it desperately bad. And that's not our intention. And so you have to slow down. You have to be more careful. You have to be more resolute about how you handle those cuts than you did about some of the ones we've already done. So when
more
we got
direct, appropriate way would also say collateral damage.
Sure. And you don't want to do that.
Right.
And that's the worst case scenario. And so, in this last session, we've done a lot of big cuts. We are we've taken some large steps towards living within our means, and we're much closer. To get us to the next session, where we're still working on more cuts, we saw that, and we've already put things in place, I'll explain in a minute, to help revenue grow in the general fund. But we saw that there's no way that money will come in overnight. It just won't happen. It will take time to cycle in to the general fund budget. And that's reality. Anybody who's in business knows that when you start a new revenue stream, it doesn't go into your account that day. It will take a period of time to cycle in and to grow. And that's true with our state budget. And so we've got 2 different streams of revenue that we have started already. One is a transfer of a use tax And a use tax is kind of like a sales tax. It's when something's bought out of state
Right.
and it's brought into our state, then that's a form of a use tax. And you don't call it, it changes from being called a sales tax to a use tax. And there's about 60 to 67 million that are being transferred from the Education Trust Fund to the general fund by agreement by everybody, education, everybody, because we see that that's a sensible thing to do. And then we're also now looking at the internet sales tax issues, and you're starting to hear about that in the paper. I met with the governor yesterday afternoon. I was there in Montgomery for a function, and I had a chance to talk with him. And he's recently come back from Washington, D.C., along with other leadership members, and they've met with our congressional delegation. And that's something that we're working on now. There's 3 pieces of legislation in Congress right now, all of which deal with this issue. And so we are trying to work with our delegation to try to get this federal law passed that will allow all states to collect sales tax basically off internet sales.
It's billions of dollars that are just going by.
For Alabama, the projected number right now, and this is just a conservative projection, is that on a yearly basis we're losing about $1 billion per year
Believe it.
in sales tax off internet sales.
And when you stop and think about that real quick, and what this bill is doing,
Correct.
that would heal the wound.
Correct, and just
Yeah.
easily. And we know that, but once again, we're working that issue through, working that money into our budget. It's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
And to be realistic, we believe it will take at least 2 to 3 fiscal cycles to start that money cycling in.
Right.
And so the reason why you hear 3 years on this bill, that this stopgap measure of bringing in about $145 million from the Alabama Trust Fund, is that we think, in good faith, it'll take about that much time to get the money cycled in. And so we are working on the revenue stream. We are working ways to heal the general fund. And that's part of the problem. The general fund, the way it's designed right now, it's poorly designed. It's flawed. The money that's going into it is very static money. It doesn't grow. And so we're having to find revenue streams that will go to the general fund that frankly are growth revenue streams. And so these are 2 revenue streams that we're putting into place that make perfect sense. They're money, and to be very blunt, the sales tax that this state is losing is causing unfair competition for our local businesses. I mean, right now, local businesses are
That's
paying
exactly where I was going to.
They're paying their sales tax,
Right.
and they're doing the responsible thing as local citizens and local business. But it's hard to compete with a company on the internet in California,
Get a 10% discount right off the top.
including free shipping,
Right.
no tax. I mean, there's all these things, and it's no way you can compete with that.
Right.
And so it's extremely unfair with all local businesses, and local businesses will tell you that in a heartbeat. And listen, I understand that everybody likes to shop on the internet, and we're not trying to stop that. We're just saying that sales tax is already the law. It's been there a long time. We're not changing any of that law. It's just that it's time that be collected so that we can take care of these services and these needs that our state has. And right now, this stopgap measure, if it were not to pass, there is great indication from the Medicaid director, from many of the other agency directors, that the cuts that will be necessary to bring our budget down a little bit more, they're the kind of cuts that, frankly, everybody's probably going to feel at home in some way.
Well, you're not pointing your finger at and saying the internet's a bad thing.
No, not
because
at all.
In fact, if that law passes and everything gets done and we start collecting the taxes,
Sure.
we'll be waving the flag going, yeah, baby.
Well,
and because we're going to collect the tax.
And it's a level playing field
That's
for,
right.
for our state businesses and out-of-state businesses. So once it's level, that's fair business. Business is business at that point.
I can remember, traveling all the time. When you went to an international airport, you went to the duty-free shop.
Sure.
Okay, and that was like, wow, I can get away with this over here, But the internet has made duty-free,
Correct.
okay, worldwide for Alabama. I mean, people can sell anything they want to or buy anything they want to on the internet in the state of Alabama, and actually have some places a 10% discount automatically because there's no taxes collected.
Well, and we're not waiting on our congressional delegation. That is the easiest, most direct route towards seeing that these taxes are collected and enforced. However, there is another method, and it's something that, in fact, I'm meeting with the Department of Revenue next week to work on this issue myself. There's something called the Streamline Pact. There's 25 states in the nation right now that are members of this Streamline Pact. And basically it's where states have gotten together and said we're going to help each other collect and enforce the internet sales tax recovery. And to be a part of that pact, we all have to work together. We have to collect it in the same method, so it's an apple-to-apple comparison. And we agree that we'll help your state collect your sales tax if you help collect our sales tax. It makes perfect sense. And it's actually helping the federal legislation towards passage because it's bringing all the states together more closely. And it will not be enough to collect the level of tax, sales tax that's out there, because these 25 states are generally the states that don't have as many of the internet sales companies. California and New York will never join that pact because that's where the bulk of these places are located, these internet sales locations are located. And until they are a part of it, we will never recover the bulk. However, some states, I've been told, are collecting as much as $200 million now through this pact. Well, if we were collecting $200 million or even $150 million right now, we would not be here today. We would not be discussing September 18th, and we would not be in the position we are in our general fund budget right now. And so even that much is a considerable help to this state and to our budgets and to our services. And so we're not waiting on one thing. We're looking at this in 2 or 3 different ways. And that's one thing that I'm hoping to work with this coming session. I've already spoken with leadership about my interest in that, is that we need to work together, and I like the idea of working with other states. I had the privilege of going to the Emerging Leaders Program in Virginia a couple of months ago and work with and learn with members of House and Senates from all over the nation. And so that's one reason why I kind of look forward to working on that project, is that it'll give me a chance to go back and interact with some of those leaders from those different states and see if we can help each other.
Well, Mike, this is all great. I mean, this is something that's long been needed to have happen, this stopgap and I know people are going to say, really, Eddie? You know, do you sell on I sell stuff on the internet all the time, okay? And I buy stuff on the internet all the time. And it's convenient. It's in the studio or at the house, and I can sit there and do things. And a lot of businesses in the area don't have the selection that you have on the internet. So you sit there and it's a smorgasbord. You go on there. But I'm willing to pay the taxes on it. Okay, it was going to help out, what we're doing here. We're talking about closing and tightening belts on a lot of things.
Correct.
And affecting, our elderly, our young people, everybody all the way down the line. You talk about trickle-down effect. This is going to be a floodgate coming down if we don't do this.
Well, and this is, I've heard all the things about kicking the can down the road and so forth, and it's far from the truth. We started the whole session when we were working through the budget, not just looking at jobs, because I still believe job growth throughout the state is the #1 method towards improving our economy and improving our state. But we also have to look at things that we're leaving on the table. And the internet sales tax, once again, it's already on the books. It's been on the books for years, in fact, probably decades. And by that I mean it's a tax on things that are sold within the state. And obviously the internet has not been around for forever, but the tax has been there. And it applies to these sales just like it does to any other sale. The issue is recovery and enforcement, and it's across state lines, so it does require either working with other states or federal legislation. We're working towards both directions, and we're working with this use tax issue we've already approved. That was approved in the special session this past in 2012 when we dealt with redistricting. That was one of the bills that the governor put on the list that we've already approved. And so that's already been done. So we are working the issue towards improving revenue for the general fund. This is not kicking the can whatsoever. By no means is this the cure, but we've had basically a year and a half to cut $674 million out of the budget towards putting growth revenue into the general fund. And that's after how many decades that our budget's been put in this situation, and we've gotten this much done in a year and a half. So give us another session. We're going to work more towards some of these fine-tuning issues, and I think you'll see more cuts. I know the governor and the leadership's goal is to have the cut total of about $1 billion, and I think you're going to see a lot more in the way of consolidation towards helping those cuts. And a lot of these cuts are going to make perfect sense. They're going to be real obvious, but we don't need to make immediate drastic cuts on things that inadvertently and unintentionally harm people that should not be harmed. And that's why you can't just go in there with a meat cleaver and cut things out. You've got to be much more careful and direct about how you handle that.
Well, again, I can't stress enough, folks, to make sure bad weather's supposed to be coming in, or rain anyway. It's supposed to be here on Tuesday, and that's not good for voter turnout. But please go out. It's only a few minutes of your time. Go vote on this. Certainly, it's something that's needed to kind of make the bridge to the next step where we have to go. Yes, we do have a very conservative leadership up there right now in Montgomery, and yes, sometimes it may appear like we're kicking the can down the road on some things up there, but you need to dig in and find the whole prospect of what's going on for the future. And there's a lot of forethought in this.
Correct.
And you know, you can't just pick out one little section and say, oh, it's bad. Find out what it's about. Mike just explained it. He just sat here and told you that's just a stopgap to make everything there until the funds become available.
Correct.
and come in. And everybody knows how that works. You know, when you start a job somewhere, you're not going to get paid for a week or two.
Correct.
Okay, and you know, that's the same thing we're looking at here, but longer term. And so we just encourage you to go vote on this, and you know, make a statement, support the conservative government that we elected into this state for that reason. And
one thing I was going to say too on the Alabama Trust Fund, some people are saying that this is going to deplete it down too much.
Yeah.
Right now, because you have to remember, revenue keeps coming into the Alabama Trust Fund, and so even while the interest goes to the general fund, and even while we take some money through this process, it's still receiving income from royalties.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the projection is if this measure passes and we take out $145 million per year for 3 years, and right now we have $2.3 million in that fund, in the Alabama Trust Fund, that in 3 years we'll have $2.7 billion in that trust fund, and so it's going to grow $300
Right.
million,
Just by doing
even
this.
with us taking this out.
Right.
And so some of the people who've been throwing out some bad, making it sound like it's awful. That fund continues to grow. It will continue to grow because of the royalties. And so even with this approval, that fund will increase in its value.
And it's going to increase more so, Mike, because the money's going to be staying here now instead
Correct.
of going elsewhere.
Correct.
And that's a good thing. Mike, we appreciate you coming on. Folks, Representative Mike Jones Jr., who has certainly been a huge asset to our community, and we certainly appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us.
Thank you, sir.
God bless.